that is, and I don't have the answer, that we need for the next 10 years, because I don't know if you can have anything any longer that has a duration, as ideas, that has a duration of more than 10 years before the world changes so much that it's no good anymore. But facts are not the answer. I'm not against facts for researchers in the room, but
they're overrated.
they're overrated. You put facts. George Lakoff is the guru on this. He says that we all have, which is why I like to do the values work I do. We have values frames. Countries have values frames. Religions have value frames. Subgroups in society have value frames. If you present people who strongly have a value frame with a fact that disagrees with their frame does not change. They either ignore or reject the new facts. And so you've got to deal with frames, with idea frames. Okay. Other comments, questions, thoughts? Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah, I guess just as a historical point, it's to put Cairo in the context of a couple of other things that were happening in the early 1990s around the Vienna Conference on Human Rights, where that was making a point that women's rights are human rights, was part and parcel of that paradigm shift that also happened at Cairo, as was the Beijing Women's Conference. And so I guess I've always seen those particular conferences as part of a very interrelated trend in terms of shifting what the development paradigm was about and making sure that women and the ability for women to make informed choices about many things was really part of what needed to be what we consider sustainable development. And I guess would be interested in your thoughts on how we are in meeting the policy changes that were recommended and within part of that whole discourse, because I think that gets to what you were just suggesting about this question of, does reproductive health stand on as a right in and of itself that you can actually build policy around, or do you need to hitch it to other policy agendas in order to get people to take it on?
Well, I'm actually thinking a lot right now about the human rights frame in reproductive health. And in terms of whatever contacts I have in the whole field of human rights, I'm not convinced that human rights as a frame in general is going to survive very long. Not just on our issue.
There's an interesting
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's a provocative statement, right? But I think there are a fair number of people, even in the human rights community right now, who are saying it's not getting us where we want to go, and not for a lack of trying, but again, there are some other seismic kinds of shifts that are going on in the way in which people think about the world. I mean, there's always been a resistance to there's a question of women, the generations of, first generation human rights, second generation of human rights, can't even get people to accept that the right to an education and the right to food and the right to shelter are human rights. And now we want people to think that the right to have sex with whomever you want, and the right to have babies whenever you want, and the right to have IVF, and the right to have all of these things are now going to be human rights as well, is tough enough on its own. Okay. You then have, this polarized world in which we live, in which rights theories are also polarized and clashing against each other. You also have, and this is my theory, you also have in very educated segments of the population, of very kind people, the revulsion against polarization, and therefore the desire to try to construct a more, try to mediate differences